The Allen Line Company wishes everyone a happy and prosperous 2024. Be safe out there.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Mark Reddick.
Nobody likes checking the air pressure on their trailer tires, but we do it because we know it's important. There are several automatic air inflation systems on the market that can help. Andy McCulloch of Michelin has some helpful advice for utilizing them in the best and safest way possible. From a federal system increasing fees for truckers to a 63-year-old trucker who earned her college degree, S.J. Munoz, Ryan Witkowski, and Jamie Jones tell us who in recent news has been good and who's been bad with some roses and raspberries. And finally, over the past few years, several states have taken a crack at doing something to prevent predatory towing practices on large trucks. One state where an effort to reform those practices has been going on for years is Missouri. I spoke recently with Tom Crawford, president and CEO of the Missouri Trucking Association, about this year's effort. But first, the news with Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Mark. Our top story today. The Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration is giving the public more time to comment on possible changes to the way a motor carrier safety fitness is determined. Last year, the agency gave the public about 3 months to provide comments about potential changes. Now it's opening up another 30-day window to comment on several reports that could inform a potential rulemaking. Those include reports on in-vehicle monitoring systems, the association between crashes and safety-critical events, the impact of federal compliance reviews, the effectiveness of safety technology, and recent fatality crash data. The public has through February 12th to provide feedback. The Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association has told FMCSA that any changes to the safety fitness determination process should not penalize motor carriers that do not receive a rating. The OOIDA Foundation is in the process of analyzing the reports released by FMCSA. A teachers' union is the latest group to challenge New York City's congestion pricing plan, which is slated to go into effect this spring. The United Federation of Teachers and the Office of the Staten Island Borough President have filed a federal lawsuit against the USDOT, Federal Highway Administration, and several New York transportation agencies. The suit, which seeks to halt New York City's recently approved congestion pricing, argues that authorities conducted a rushed and hurried approval process with an intent focus on raising revenue. The union also voices concerns about pollution and traffic, suggesting that the congestion pricing plan will merely shift those problems to other nearby areas like Staten Island, the Bronx, Upper Manhattan, and northern New Jersey. The lawsuit seeks a full and proper environmental impact statement from FHWA and to halt the congestion pricing plan until that statement is completed. For years, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association has held firm that congestion pricing is unfair for truckers. OOIDA Director of Government Affairs Colin Long told us all the way back in the fall of 2019 that, unlike many motorists, truckers do not have flexibility when it comes to when and where they drive.
Truckers lack the flexibility in their schedule or the control over their schedule to make certain that they're not arriving in a lot of these urban or suburban areas that are considering congestion pricing at a time when roads are at their highest congestion.
Under New York City's new plan, the recommended congestion pricing for large trucks entering the central business district is $36. But this is not a done deal. Public hearings are expected to begin in February, after which time the Metropolitan Transportation Authority will vote on whether to authorize adoption of the plan. In the meantime, the legal challenges keep coming. In July, the state of New Jersey filed a lawsuit voicing concerns similar to those of the teachers' union. The Biden administration is doling out $623 million in grants to help build an electric vehicle charging network nationwide. The grants announced Thursday will fund 47 EV charging stations, 7,500 EV charging ports, and other related projects in 22 states and Puerto Rico. It's all part of the Biden administration's goal of building out a national network of 500,000 publicly available chargers by the year 2030. As the Associated Press points out, Ohio and New York are the only states right now that have open charging stations under the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program, but several other states, including Pennsylvania and Maine, are expected to open stations sometime later this year. EV sales have more than quadrupled since President Biden took office 3 years ago, and the number of publicly available charging ports has grown by nearly 70% to nearly 170,000, about a third of the way to the Biden administration's ultimate goal. A new law taking effect in Ohio this spring will ban state agencies from adopting emission regulations similar to those in California. The Ohio legislature passed the measure in mid-December. Governor Mike DeWine signed it into law 2 weeks later. The law states that the Ohio Environmental Protection Agency or any other state agency may not adopt any motor vehicle emission standards established by California as a result of a Clean Air Act waiver. That waiver allows California to put stricter emission standards into effect than the federal government. The Ohio law also bans cities, counties, and the state from restricting the use or sale of gas and diesel vehicles. Congress now has 1 week to come to a deal to fund the government or risk a partial government shutdown. You may remember that a deal was struck in the House in November that averted a shutdown leading into the holidays, but that deal is set to run out next Friday. Without a new plan to fund the government by January 19th, the government will enter a partial shutdown that will affect the DOT, among others. The rest of the government would need to be funded by February 2nd. GOP members of the House and Senate are trying to link border security to any new funding bill, something Democrats say is a non-starter. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer is seeking a temporary extension of government funding, which would allow both sides to continue working on the appropriations process. But House Speaker Mike Johnson has said he's done with short-term continuing resolutions that fund the government for short periods of time. The two sides remain at odds over a top-line spending number as well. Add it all up, and pundits say the prospects of a government shutdown are more and more likely. What would that mean for the trucking industry? According to the U.S. DOT, trucking regulators would largely stay unaffected. That includes the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. That's because they are paid out of the Highway Trust Fund and other sources that do not depend on annual government funding. Inspections would continue, so too would other normal operations. But some trucking-related functions would be disrupted. A U.S. DOT report detailing their plan during a shutdown includes adjustments for hazardous materials transportation providers. Only dire permits would be processed, meaning regular permits would be put on hold. Several dozen union drivers at U.S. Foods in Chicago went on strike earlier this week. The International Brotherhood of Teamsters Local 705 said the two sides have failed to come to terms on a new collective bargaining agreement. Union members are asking for better pay and better benefits. U.S. Foods says it remains committed to continuing negotiations. The strike includes more than 130 drivers right now. U.S. Foods has brought in temporary workers to fill the void. And finally, the days of those witty highway messages filled with puns may be over. The Federal Highway Administration is not a fan. The agency announcing new guidance on how states can and should use electronic message boards to convey important information to drivers. According to the FHWA, highway messages should be simple, direct, brief, legible, and clear to drivers. Out of favor, pop culture references, playful language, and humor in general, things the agency says could be misunderstood or understood only by a limited segment of road users. New Jersey may take some of the blame here. The state turned heads in the past with messages like "We'll be blunt, don't drive high," and "Get your head out of your apps," among others. But when people started taking pictures of the signs, New Jersey's DOT had to tell them to cut it out. Then federal authorities followed suit, leading us to this new guidance that applies to everyone. That's Landline Now News for today. I'm Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Scott. Next, Andy McCulloch of Michelin has some helpful advice for utilizing automatic air inflation systems in the best and safest way possible. S.J. Munoz, Ryan Witkowski, and Jamie Jones of Landline Magazine bring us some Roses and Razzberries, and I'll discuss a predatory towing reform effort with Tom Crawford of the Missouri Trucking Association. We'll be back in just a moment with more of the show. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
Are you tired of the IRS following you around like a dark cloud? Call 888-557-4020 and get your life back.
Control your toll costs and eliminate tolling headaches with Prepass Tolls. Prepass Tolls means toll volume discounts. Just one invoice for all tolls and fewer violations. Call 877-878-5970 or go to prepass.com.
It's tested and proven. Burn 2.1% less fuel when you balance all wheel ends with Centromatic. Call 800-523-8473 to get the OOIDA discount.
And we're back. Make a list of things you enjoy doing, and checking the air pressure of your trailer tires is likely to land somewhere between getting a root canal and cleaning out the gutters. But we do it because it's important, and the good news is there are several automatic air inflation systems on the market that can help. Joining us with some helpful advice, as always, is Andy McCulloch of Michelin. Andy is a senior CES engineer for the West Coast. Andy, always a pleasure. How are you?
Scott, doing well, thanks. I always look forward to talking to you and being on the show. You know, the good news for folks that have these air inflation systems is that they do exactly what they're supposed to do. They're going to put air into a tire that's low, and there are a lot of different models out there with a lot of slightly different features, but ultimately most of them are pretty similar in operation, and they provide some sort of visual or audible alarm to let you know you have a tire going down or getting low on air. And they're not maintenance free, and they do require operators to understand how they work if you really want to reduce your emergency roadside service issues.
Yeah, and I think that's probably a great place to start. Let's enroll in Air Inflation Systems 101 for a moment here, starting with, as you put it there, how they are supposed to work.
Well, I really like these systems because they're really very quite simple. And I think they're quite ingenious in how they work. They just take the air that the tractor supplies, which is usually used for the braking system, of course, and they regulate it and they route it to the trailer tires. And the beauty of this whole thing is they do it with very few moving parts. These things can last a long time, and they really shouldn't give you a lot of problems. So at the heart of the whole thing, you have a pressure regulator, which should give you the desired pressure that you want in your tires. Now, you can also isolate that pressure regulator in the event that you have a leak in the system or if you need to do some sort of maintenance. And there's also an automatic safety valve. And what this is so that if you have a tire blowout and all that air is going out of the tire, but you don't want your brakes to fail, right? Remember, the brakes are air-operated. You need the air for your brakes. So the safety valve will isolate it. So when the pressure drops below a set point, you're never robbing your air brakes of the priority to stop the vehicle. Some of these systems will use the actual axle itself of the trailer as the air tank. Some of them run air lines. But either way, they pass through what's called a rotating joint, which is the only actual moving part in the whole system. And it makes it pretty reliable. Then from there, they go out through hoses to the tires where you're able to check the air pressure.
Yeah, reliability, that is important. sounds important for sure. So as you kind of point out there, we've got all these individual parts. Individually, they've got their own jobs. But obviously, any system that works properly, they all need to work together to get the job done. Can you lay out kind of how that works, what that looks like, how the process, again, when it all comes together, looks like?
Sure thing. When you get a nail or a screw in your tire, the pressure is going to go down, obviously. So when the pressure drops below what your air inflation system says it should have in it, then the air starts to flow to your tire. And if there's enough airflow, you'll get a little flow switch that lets the driver know there's a problem. And what it does is it turns on an indicator light telling him that there's a potential tire issue. So if the inflation system can keep up with that leak rate, however, the light might actually go out and maybe even stay out. So if the tire is leaking very fast, you're protected because the pressure drops down roughly below 80 psi. That safety valve is going to close, and the tire will still go flat, but at least your brakes will continue to work. So it's a pretty simple system in how it operates.
And the way you describe it there, it sounds like, again, I'll emphasize that this really requires no intervention. Again, a system that keeps a tire inflated even if it gets punctured. Almost sounds too good to be true. And as we know, Andy, when something sounds too good to be true, it probably is or often is. And I imagine there is some fine print here that applies when we're talking about this system in particular.
And that's very true. The thing is that truck tires are a little different than passenger car tires. The problem is if you keep putting air into a truck tire that's got a nail or screw in it, it'll actually cause the tire to start to separate. When the nail punctures the trailer tire, the leak is usually really slow, and the air inflation system is going to put air in it. As it starts to supply air to compensate for that leak, The problem is that if the light goes out because of that, because it's able to compensate and keep the air pressure up, the driver's going to think, okay, there is no problem anymore because the light went out. But despite that, the hidden air leak is still causing some really bad issues with the tire. And if you think of it in terms of, say, 100 psi, which is typical air pressure for a trailer tire, that 100 pounds per square inch has so much ability and so much work effort, it can actually separate the rubber and the steel of the tire easier than it can go out through the nail puncture because it's the path of least resistance. So in that case, the best outcome you're going to have from this is you're going to get a bubble in the tire. The worst outcome is a possible rapid air loss on the side of the road. Either way, whether you have the blowout or where you have air infiltration damage to the tire, you're going to be stuck on the side of the road, number one, and it will have ruined and damaged the casing of the tire itself. So you won't be able to retread that tire. It's going to be a loss to your bottom dollar.
Yeah, classic catch-22 situation here, it sounds like. Just to kind of recap and to make sure that we're all understanding what you're saying there, right? You get a nail in your trailer tire, the tire is going flat if you don't have an air inflation system, obviously. So you find yourself on the side of the road waiting for help. But then again, even if you do have an air inflation system, the tire is suffering some damage, and there you are again, stuck on the side of the road waiting for help as well. Kind of a lose-lose situation there, it sounds like.
Well, yes and no. Really only a lose-lose if you do nothing to remedy the situation. The good news is the whole thing is preventable. A good pre-trip inspection can prevent these kind of problems, and the air inflation system usually gives you pretty fair warning, as long as you pay attention to it and don't ignore it. So let me give you a common scenario. A lot of times you have a driver, they'll hook up to a trailer prior to starting their trip, and they might notice a warning light comes on. And it's usually on the left side or the left front of the trailer. That's the air inflation system telling you air is flowing. So what's important to remember here is that these systems trigger off of flow, not off of pressure. If there's enough flow, then the light will come on. Now, here's where the problem happens, though. A lot of the drivers see the light come on, and then they see it go out after a few minutes, and they make the assumption that no light means there's no problem. But the opposite is really true. If the light is on, you have flow somewhere. Now, maybe it's a leak in your tire, maybe it's a leak in your air inflation system, but there's air flowing somewhere, so you don't want to just ignore it.
Yeah, sound advice that applies to all sorts of things, particularly with airflow there. You brought up something interesting, Andy, and I've heard this before as well. You know, we've all been fooled by warning lights before. Obviously, they can come on sometimes when there isn't actually a problem there. Are there cases in looking at this system in which the air inflation system does malfunction like that? And in that case, what do you do? And I guess, what do you think as well?
Well, that can actually happen. And we're actually in the time of year now where that could happen, and that's in wintertime. Occasionally what can happen is when the temperature outside drops, the pressure in your tires can drop too. When you hook up to the trailer, the light might come on because it's actually feeding air to the tires because it thinks the tire's low. And it's not wrong. It is because of the colder temperature in that case. It's just not all of these systems out there can or will bleed air out if it inflates it too much. And so what can happen is, let's say it's a cold morning, you hook up to the trailer, and it pumps some air into the system, and then maybe tomorrow the temperature goes up to 70 degrees. Well, that air that was fed in there yesterday when it's colder now is at a higher pressure than it was when the air got added. And that can be a problem because you can get overpressure in these systems in the tires. And overpressures, can be just as detrimental to a tire. It can cause irregular wear. You can make it more susceptible to impact shock ruptures. So it's important for listeners to know your system and know what you have and how it operates.
Yeah, clearly one of these things where if you do everything right, it's going to help you along the way. If you do something wrong, it could absolutely cause some headaches here. Let's wrap all of this up into a tidy bow here, Andy, because you've given us a lot of good information, lots of do's and don'ts, and this is a system that does require some care and attention as we've kind of laid out here. Can you, once again, just take us through maybe some rules for making sure that everything is working in proper order?
Yeah, absolutely. And there are basically 6 simple rules or steps that we can follow. to do that. So rule number one would be is a really common is number one is really a common sense rule that's easy to remember. If that light comes on, then assume something is wrong. I don't care if it goes out after a couple of minutes or not, because when it goes on, it's telling you there's airflow. So a visual inspection is what you should be doing in that case. And we're all supposed to do pre-trip inspections anyway, right? So look for the obvious penetrations in your tires like nails or screws, anything like that. And when you see them, go ahead and get them fixed right away, because if you don't, then, we've already learned that we're going to get air infiltration into the tire, and that'll cause a lot of damage to the tire. We don't want that, obviously. So rule number two is you should all have a good quality air pressure gauge in your truck. And you need to learn how to check your particular system with that gauge. So you're verifying that the system is working with your air gauge. Most of the time, you check the air pressure back at the tires themselves. There's a detachable hose that can be unscrewed from the connector when you pull that hose off. And you can check the air pressure since it's got a Schrader valve, just like in your valve stem. Now, some of the new ones have really easy to use check access ports that are built into the hoses. And I like those because they're not on all the systems, though, but they're much easier to check your air pressure with. So, again, it's important to know what kind of system you have in that respect. Rule number three is if you have a light and it won't go out, then you definitely have a problem. So what you don't want to do is don't isolate the system with a shutoff valve. And I've seen drivers and mechanics do this. When you isolate the system, it's not going to pump any more air into the tire, and it's not going to save you from getting a flat. So you're just masking the problem. So if you do have that issue, report it to maintenance, get the issue resolved right away. Rule number 4 would be when you do your pre-trip check, listen for air leaks, especially around the hub. Most of the time, these things, if they're going to leak, they'll leak around the hub itself where the hose is attached, and it's a really easy thing to fix. So if you hear a leak, get it fixed right away. The other thing is if you're checking air pressure with your manual gauge and you find that the inner dual doesn't match the outer dual by, let's say, more than 5 pounds, 5 psi, there's probably something wrong with the system or something going on. Sometimes these hoses get installed and they get over-tightened and they actually block the flow. And again, this is a really easy thing to fix. So get it corrected right away because the duals really should match within about 5 pounds. And last but not least, number 6, if you do get a flat on the side of the road, you don't have to isolate the system to change the tire. And that's important to remember. The service provider only has to unscrew the hoses. My worry would be that if you shut the isolation valve off, then he might forget it and won't turn it back on, and then the system won't function. So just for our listeners to remember, you don't have to isolate. You can simply just unscrew the hoses, change your tire, then put the hoses back on. Everything should function as designed. So those are basically the 6 simple rules to follow to ensure that you're going to be trouble-free.
6 rules to live by, and that concludes our class in air inflation systems. Andy, we learn something new every time we talk to you, certainly the case today as well. We appreciate it. Hope to talk to you again soon, and we appreciate, again, all your wisdom that you've imparted on us today. Thanks so much.
Thank you, absolutely, and hopefully this will help our listeners to stay off the side of the road, and I'd rather see them delivering freight and keeping the country running, so we certainly appreciate what they do.
Absolutely. That was Andy McCulloch of Michelin. Landline Now is back right after this short commercial break, so stick around.
Attention professional drivers, are you behind on your tax filings? You owe money? Integrity Tax Relief Group frees drivers from IRS trouble. You watch the road, we'll keep an eye on the IRS. Call now, 855-976-4291.
Dispatch, I picked up that load of steel, so I'm ready to roll.
Sounds good. Remember, we're getting paid by weight, so make sure to use a CAT scale.
I wouldn't weigh anywhere else.
Forget miss accuracy, weigh your truck on a CAT scale.
Landline Now, welcome back. Has your senator or congressman made you happy lately? Did the truck stop make you kind of sad? When they do either one, here at Landline, we have a special way of responding.
Ew.
We call it Roses and Razzberries. Staff writer S.J. Munoz keeps track of such things for Landline Magazine and for our program. S.J. is here now with the good, the bad, and the ugly from recent news.
And we're back with another edition of Roses and Razzberries. New Year, same us, I suppose. But maybe we'll get a little wacky here. You never know what's going to happen. S.J. Munoz, Jamie Jones, Ryan Witkowski here with you again as always. How goes 2024 so far, guys?
Well, we've gotten to shovel snow, so yay.
That's always fun, right?
Yeah, 2 weeks into it, and it's not off to a great start, so hopefully
it can only get better, I guess. It's kind of the mindset we'll take, I guess. I don't know if that's...
All right,
I'll try to be positive. Yeah.
Well, before we have one optimist in the group.
Before we get going, though, this is kind of something that we've typically done at the end, but I do want to encourage, just with any legislative or any topic that we cover, the truckers, everybody on the road. That's where we need the info from, and that goes along with Roses and Razzberries. And anything you see,
those hero stories,
exactly, yeah,
anything like that.
Yeah.
Something cool at a truck stop.
Or something really giving you problems that we're not aware of, we'll definitely love to razz them. So just as a reminder as we start here, just if you have an idea, please send them to roses@landlinemag.com. Just, refresh. We're always, we'd love to hear from out on the road because that's what we care about and that's what we're trying to talk about.
All right. Well, I guess I'm going to kick things off. But I'm going to break from tradition here for me, and I'm going to go with some roses, okay?
Ooh.
Now, these go for efforts for some Missouri lawmakers who are trying to tackle predatory towing in the state. Representative Dave Griffith, who's a Republican representing Jefferson City, is behind this legislation, and the bill really looks to rein in non-consensual towing. So here you are busted down on the side of the road, and they just call up the next group on the list, and that you're stuck, So the current state law doesn't allow truckers or anybody for that matter to file complaints when they think they're overcharged for a non-consensual tow. So you're just a sitting duck.
And that's something until you get in this obviously terrible situation, who would be aware of? I mean, you would think if anything, you go to the store and you're overcharged, you can file a complaint. But for some reason, thousands of dollars can leave your pocket and it's, sorry.
And by the way, you can't complain about it. Either.
Yeah, $40,000 for a 4-mile tow and boo-hoo, you can't do anything about it.
Few things drive me as wild as things that are completely out of my control. So I can only empathize here.
Well, the whole thing about this bill, supporters, which includes OOIDA, say that this would ensure towing companies are not able to take advantage of people who are arguably not having a good day.
So we're just going to disrupt their whole business model?
Yeah. So it just makes sure that these towing companies can't take advantage of them because there's none of that recourse, that there's no system for them to turn to. And while that's all well and good, when I started this, I said that they were trying it again, right? That's the operative word. So I'm going to turn around and hand out some raspberries. And
only fitting.
Oh, the little bait and switch. And these go to vetoes by Governor Mike Parsons of similar attempts to clamp down on this predatory towing. Parsons said a previous proposal was, quote, legally problematic. And in 2019, he said the state had, quote, adequate protections. We're not sure what he's talking about to address towing matters. Now, OOIDA's Director of State Government Affairs, Doug Morris, said Griffith's current proposal is simply common sense legislation. And he said, quote, the only thing stopping the Missouri bill from passing is the fact that the governor refuses to sign the bill and continues to support the unfair practices of predatory towing. So it's one of those things, anybody who's in the state of Missouri, especially truckers, just needs to call up their lawmakers and ask them to support HB 2214. And hopefully we can get this one across the finish line this time and not have the governor veto it.
Yeah, like I said before, just a lot of it's awareness, and it's you wouldn't think we talk about a lot of things, the bathroom deal and things of that sort. That it's kind of like you just slam your head on the desk, like how is this not even already in law? But it's not, and we need to keep the attention on it so that it gets into law.
Well, yeah, and it's one of those things. Like I said, you're having a pretty bad day to begin with if you're calling a tow truck, and if you have the wherewithal to think clearly and go, wait a minute, can I call my own, ask the right questions. And then if you get shot down and just this random company takes you for a ride, literally with the fee and everything, it just seems like, how is that a good thing?
Roped us in with the raspberries or roses and hit us with the raspberries.
I did.
That was good.
It was a
good,
bait and
JB.
switch.
That was good. I actually have some real roses, and this story is the definition of never giving up on your dreams. Recently, Robin Roberts, not the GMA host, but a
Thanks for the
professional
clarification
driver.
there. Yeah.
I didn't know if you needed it. Professional driver for 15 years, Robin Roberts. She earned her college degree at the age of 63. Now, Roberts began driving team with her husband, Tim, over the road back in, 15 years ago, I guess. 2008. That's the number I was looking for.
Hey, he's mathing, folks. All right.
Not only are they team drivers, but they're parents of 8 children, 33 grandchildren, and 12 great-grandchildren.
I was wondering if you were going to throw that in
I'm
there.
absolutely going to work that in because that seems impressive enough in its own right. But there's more because Robin took a break from college. She went to Howard University right after high school, like a lot of people do. And she decided, hey, you know what? I'm going to take a break for a semester. Well, that semester break turned into a 7-year career in the legal field, and things kind of snowballed from there. With a conversation with one of her grandkids who was leaving high school, she was kind of telling him how important it is to go on to college, and he pointed out, hey, Grandma, you didn't finish college. You seem to be doing fine.
Kids are good. Yeah, grandkids they're good about pointing out what we didn't do, right?
Yeah. Go ahead and point out our hypocrisy. And so she said, you're right. And so they made an agreement, and she said, if I go back to school, you're going to go ahead and go to college as well. She lived up to her end of the deal. She said it took her 5 years in the back of the truck. She took one class at a time per term, and she would, oftentimes be working while her husband was driving. Sometimes she'd have to pull off at a rest station because she said it's hard to type when you're bouncing around in a truck. So she'd pull off for an hour or so to finish an assignment. But either way, November 2022, she graduated with her business degree. So tip of the cap to Robin for doing that.
With honors,
that's
right?
She was summa cum laude. And by the way, her and her grandson had a competition to see whose GPA was going to be higher. She said she kicked his butt. So
there you go,
needless
Grandma.
to say, she kicked her butt. That's exactly how she put it. But she did tell Landline Now that, quote, there's always time to do what's in your heart. Delayed is not denied. So the next time you think you don't have enough time to accomplish something, let Robin Roberts make you feel bad about yourself because there is plenty of time.
Well, impressive doesn't even kind of begin to describe that. It's kind of just,
I think the most impressive thing is right after she got this degree, she went and cooked Thanksgiving dinner for 33 grandkids, 12 great-grandkids, and 8 children. So I don't know, do the math on that. You got to rent out like a convention center to do it.
Hopefully nobody complained about the meal either.
How many
that
turkeys do you think that takes?
All right, well, we have another feel-good story, and I don't even think you need to be a cat person, so to speak, to appreciate this one.
I am not a cat
The roses for this... Okay. So we're split here. Chad McIntyre, a truck driver from Illinois, he often travels with his cat Tyler. Unfortunately, though, during a stop in Nevada, Chad and Tyler were separated. The 15-pound cat, so he's not, kind of sneaking around. He somehow escaped the truck when Chad went inside to, take care of whatever he needed to inside the rest area. And despite his frantic searching, he wasn't able to locate the cat. I can imagine just that that emotional, just devastation, almost like a gut punch.
That's your travel buddy.
Yeah, exactly. I guess, though, we have a good ending to this story as well. 5 days later, the cat was located at a Flying J in Rock Springs, Wyoming, which was about 700 miles from truck stop in Nevada.
That was a heck of a ride.
Yeah. Of course, the owners, Chad and his wife, they believe the cat probably hitched a ride. Don't think they made the 700-mile trek, but at the same time, that's kind of incredible to travel that far. And good news here too is the cat was microchipped, so that's how they were able to locate Chad. So maybe another reminder for people that travel with their companions to get that done if they haven't yet.
15-pound cat, it probably could have stood you walk a few miles though.
Hey,
I'm just saying, that's a fat cat.
Hey, we're not going to cat shame here yet.
100%. I have numbers to back this up according to the Association for Pet Obesity Prevention.
Making that up.
I am not making this up. There is an Association for Pet Obesity Prevention. They have a pet human weight equivalency chart. I looked it up. A 15-pound cat is equivalent to a 254-pound, 5'9" male, which is oddly close to my dimensions. So
maybe
I know for a fact that's a fat cat because I am.
Either way, the cat made it back home. We're not going to shame the cat. And
I think he just did.
Yeah. Well, he can, but we won't.
According to this association, by the way, 58% of cats are overweight and 21% are obese. So it's a real epidemic in our country is what I'm getting at.
You have hijacked this.
Well, why? And to close here, to finish, Chad and his wife are obviously thrilled that the cat made it back, but Tyler, the cat, is grounded from going on the truck for a while. So, he's going to be at home for a little bit at least.
I love pets with people names, by the way.
I was having trouble keeping Tyler and Chad
That's
separate.
why I kept saying the cat, because I was like, okay, which one?
Tyler the cat?
I mean, I'm the one that names one of my cats Woodrow F. Call. And when he's in trouble, he gets his whole name, Anyway, I digress. All right, let's see what useless facts you have when it comes to the UCR registration fees.
That's all of the useless facts. Those were highly useful facts.
Well,
I don't know.
The run was good while it lasted, but if UCR board has its way, we are going to see the first increase in UCR fees starting in 2025 after decreases every year since 2017. I mean, that's a lot of years.
So quite a run there.
Yeah, so FMCSA has published its intentions to increase the 2025 UCR fees by an average of 25%. Now, depending on the carrier's number of vehicles, the total number of vehicles they have, the fee would increase as little as $9 or as much as $9,000. And more specifically for those little trucks or small companies, 0 to 2 trucks, you'd be paying $46. Now, just for some perspective, back before these all started decreasing, that fee was upwards of $76 for these small motor carriers. And they've been saying, we don't know what to do with all this money. We don't know what to do with all this money. And all of a sudden, here we are having to increase it.
Needing that money again for some reason.
Yeah, and the only thing it does is supposedly help states fund their roadside enforcement of commercial motor vehicles. But not all states participate in it. If we were honestly giving away free money to states for enforcement issues, don't you think they would all sign on?
I mean, you would think so. I mean, I don't know many states are going to turn down money handing out
that
there.
They don't have to do anything for. Yeah, I mean, it's all kind of insane. So UCR, there will be a comment period. Maybe we can battle this back. It's one of those fees that just really needs to go away. But quickly, while I'm talking about more money, let's talk about tolls too. Let's give raspberries out to the Ohio Turnpike, the New York State Thruway, and the North Carolina Turnpike Authority, who are all increasing tolls this year. Yay.
Neat.
And I find it funny that every time they put out one of these press releases, it's all about how the money's going to go to infrastructure. No, that's, you can tell by the condition of most of these roads that's not the case.
Talking about this pothole-ridden highway?
Yeah. And then the other thing is, but they're still the lowest in the country. You got any random facts on that?
I don't have any facts for you on that.
All right.
Other than that, Ohio and New York both claim they have the lowest toll rates in the country.
It's kind of one of those, but wait, there's more, because when you talk about New York City, they've got a plan for the whole congestion pricing that they're wanting to go with. And fun fact, trucks are going to get hit every time, no matter what. They're making concessions for, people who live in the area or whatever. And this is still an evolving thing. But fortunately for everybody who would be faced with that extra fee, there's already a lawsuit, and a teachers union filed it. So, go teachers union.
Well, maybe not so much for that only way to go up from here I started the show with, but I'm glad they did that. But hopefully we'll get some more good news to end it with you next time. That's it for this edition of Roses and Razzberries. For Jamie Jones and Ryan Witkowski, I'm S.J. Munoz. Landline Now will be back after this commercial break.
Stock up on How's Diesel Treat, the nation's most trusted anti-gel. And to be safe from the harshest winter conditions, make sure you have How's Diesel Lifeline on hand, the fastest-acting gelling rescue product. Available nationwide, How's products are designed to keep you rolling through the toughest conditions. Visit howsproducts.com.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com, because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Landline Now, welcome back. Over the past few years, several states have taken a crack at doing something to prevent predatory towing practices on large trucks. The problem involves non-consensual towing, Instances where, for example, a truck has been in a wreck and the police or some other first responder calls for a tow truck, meaning the trucker has no choice. While most people in the towing sector are honest, in some places, predatory towing operations have charged outrageous bills. One state where an effort to reform those practices has been going on for years is Missouri. And I spoke recently with Tom Crawford, president and CEO of the Missouri Trucking Association, about this year's effort. So there is a new effort this year to pass towing reform for large trucks in Missouri. First, would you outline the bill and some of the details of what the bill would do?
This is kind of another attempt, if you will, at something that we've been working together with OIDA, Missouri Trucking Association, and several of our collective members on for the past several sessions. And last session, we had a bill filed that actually got some movement, was working its way through the process. And, you know, as the legislative process gets, sometimes it just kind of got hung up. But we had some good discussions going, and also we basically refiled that legislation from last session. And basically what the bill does is it kind of outlines a process that after, and again, this is just for an accident happens on the road and some sort of law enforcement or other government official or somebody trying to clear the road calls a towing company or a wrecker to come and get the commercial vehicle. It's not the instances where the trucking company or the owner-operator or somebody has an issue and is calling the tow truck or wrecker company out themselves. This is what we call a non-consensual towing situation. So something happens and the folks are trying to get the road cleared, and so you don't get to pick your provider, if you will. You just kind of take whoever comes up and tries to hook up and take off with your equipment. So that's the premise of where we're starting on this. This year's bill is House Bill 2214, again sponsored by Representative Dave Griffith from the Jefferson City area of the state. He has been a longtime supporter and has worked on these issues and the various attempts at the issues for several sessions, basically since he became a legislator. And so he's been a very good supporter. And what it does is it allows, so you have the situation, there's already some processes in place for what happens, but this kind of makes some changes. So if something happens and your equipment's taken and it's impounded or put in the the company's lot, you can go and get your personal property out of it. Say you've got the driver has some medications or, their cell phone or their tablet or their documents or something like that. They can come and get their documents. There's no charge for that. The company can't hold those. And then the part that kind of got everything riled up last year and got the attention of some of the towing companies was you can get that equipment out of hock by basically a down payment of 30% on the bill to have that property released. And so that kind of got folks' attention in the towing world and got them to come in and actually hired some contract lobbyists for a couple of companies in and of themselves trying to work with us to negotiate a little different number or something like that. So that's the broad outlines of the legislation. It's basically, hey, looking across the country, looking across this state, what is something that's being done? How can we protect truckers and folks that, again, most of the times through no fault of their own, their equipment ends up being impounded by a tower or a wrecker company, maybe fraudulently, maybe not fraudulently, but what's the process in place to get them their equipment back and get them back to making money so those bills can get paid? That's kind of the broad outlines of the legislation. And legislature just started about a week ago. We're 1 week in, and the House has had several hearings and kind of moving on. The Senate is a different animal, and it takes a little bit longer to get to that process. But we're looking to some hearings starting possibly next week in the Senate. Some have been heard this week, but not very many. So that's the broad outlines, Mark.
Now, in some other states that have attempted various types of towing reform, there's been either a limit on the amount that can be charged for a tow or a schedule or an appeals process if someone thinks they've been charged too much. Is there anything like that in this bill?
Not at the current time. We've as you and I have talked in past years, we've had a lot of different efforts to put different processes, different task force, different fee schedules, different whatever in place. And we had one make it to the governor's desk a few years ago and got vetoed. Well, that governor is still here. So we're trying to navigate the process and get something on the governor's desk that will be acceptable. And so this is, in discussions with your folks, your legislative, your grassroots folks in OIDA and ourselves, trying to come up with something, looking at what other states have done. This got their attention and it got some traction last year. So we're going to continue to push on that. Our ultimate goal absolutely would get to have a little more process in place in Missouri. Fortunately, we don't have a huge problem with this issue in Missouri. We've got pretty responsible towing community. We've got good law enforcement community. So we've got good partners, if you will, in the process. But as your listeners and my members and OIDA's members can attest to daily, we have issues that happen in Missouri, and OIDA can help kind of navigate those. But other than leaning on the collective strength of our organization, there is no process in place other than appeal to the consumer division at the Attorney General's office or hiring a private attorney yourself for a driver or a company to try to get these things resolved. And again, these are situations that the company or the driver is a bystander, if you will. They're not calling the company out to have a tow. It's some state entity or government official calling this tow truck company out, and the driver and company is kind of take it or leave it. This is what the bill is. So we're trying to put something in place, baby steps, if you will, to kind of get the process going here in Missouri and kind of get the door open a little bit. But I think neither OIDA nor Missouri Trucking Association is satisfied with, if this bill would pass, this isn't enough.
What did the governor say were his objections to some of the past efforts?
Going back in my memory, I think part of the problem was, at that point, the issue was a task force that was being put together, and we were trying to give the task force some responsibilities, and they did not think that we had the authority to give a task force those kinds of responsibilities. And then the second part of that was just the way the legislative process kind of unfolded. They didn't like our legislation kind of tagging along with some other legislation. So read between the lines what you want on that, but those were the statements in the letter. We were, as was OIDA, a little surprised with the response and seeing this issue show up in the letter from the governor's office, because we had met with the governor's office earlier that year and kind of outlined our issues and where we were headed. And there was no indication that would be a problem. When the year that happened, I think we spent some time on the phone, and I know a letter was generated jointly between us, I think, to the governor's office expressing our frustration with that. So we've kind of let that go and moving forward, trying to find a solution for our membership. This is one that has had some movement last year. As much as there's probably not much legislatively that'll go this session, we're hopeful that this has started the process enough last year that we might have a shot this year of getting across the finish line.
That was Tom Crawford, President and CEO of the Missouri Trucking Association, talking about HB 2214, a bill to reform towing practices in the state. Missouri truckers are encouraged to call their state lawmakers about the bill. Again, HB 2214. You can get contact information at fightingfortruckers.com. That's our show for today. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
I'm a dad,
a son,
a husband,
wife,
I'm a writer,
photographer,
I farm,
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing,
my kids,
chrome, and I am
a
professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers.
We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us! Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit ooida.com.